Hello, everyone. I'm Cyndi Edwards from PRMedia Now. Today, we're getting the latest update from Algernon Pharmaceuticals. Recent results from its Phase 2b/3 COVID-19 trial show patients who received Ifenprodil had a reduction in Interleukin 6. Not only is this interesting news, it's promising for the Phase 2 trial of Ifenprodil for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and chronic cough. Algernon's CEO, Chris Moreau, is here to tell us more. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Cyndi.
So let's talk more about the IPF and Cough Study. Can you remind us what this study is about exactly and where it's being conducted?
Sure. So Algernon is conducting a phase 2 clinical trial in Australia and New Zealand for patients who have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, and chronic cough. It's a 20-patient open label study. That means no placebo. The treatment is for 3 months. And at the end of that 3-month period, after the patients take 20 milligrams of Ifenprodil 3 times a day, that's the formulation and the dose, we're going to be looking at various markers of fibrosis. And we're also looking at their cough. When they join the study, they wear a halter for the day over a 24-hour period. We track their coughing. Then they come back at day 30. They wear the halter again. Sophisticated software that screens out anything but coughs. And then at the end of the study, we do another cough count. So there's 3 cough count because we're also looking at chronic cough in addition to idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So, and we just announced 50% enrollment in that study yesterday. And of course, we announced today that a biomarker we were looking at in our COVID study for Ifenprodil could possibly be predictive of how our IPF study might be going in Australia.
Okay, well, explain for us a little bit about the mechanics of running a clinical study and why it can sometimes take a significant amount of time to reach the 100% enrollment.
It's complicated, obviously, and we've talked a bit about it before. But you know, the key issue, I guess, is what are you studying and what's the prevalence of that disease in the population. So we're looking at idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It is an orphan indication. That means a smaller percentage of the population have the disease. We're running the study in Australia, which is a small population to begin with. We're running it in Australia because of the 40% refundable tax credit. Other companies are also doing research in Australia. So the whole purpose was to attract research. So there's a competitive aspect. And when you run your study, you just don't run it for the entire country. Yes, we're doing it in Australia, but we're working with specific clinics and investigators who have signed up to run the study with us. They have a certain number of patients, a respirologist who's running a clinic, that have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. They also have to have cough. Those patients have to qualify with our inclusion and exclusion criteria. We, as an example, may not, or a study may not enroll a patient that has a different type of cancer and is on chemotherapy, because you don't want that chemotherapy drug to interfere with the signal that you're looking for with the drug you're studying. These are very, very sick folks. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis has a average lifespan of about 3 years from diagnosis. And so adding on to that, we had COVID, you have lockdowns, and telemedicine. You can't do this over the phone. You have to present at the clinic. You have to enroll, get your medication. So there's a burden on the patient. And look, just sometimes trials take a long time to enroll them. It just depends on all the factors. And as I've said before, patience is the key, pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what are you hoping the data will show, and what impact will it be on the company if it is in fact positive?
Well, we're hoping that Ifenprodil will either arrest or reduce the fibrosis or the scarring that's going on in the lung from these patients, and we're also hoping that it's showing a meaningful reduction in the cough count of these patients. And if Ifenprodil, this is a pilot study. It's a fairly small study, 20 patients. But I think the impact, if we have positive phase 2 data from this pilot study, is that we'll be going to the US FDA. We'll file a pre-IND application, and we'll get to another level about starting to do a trial in the US to focus on hopefully both, or at least either IPF or chronic cough. That's the hope.
Tell us more about Interleukin 6 and what was discovered from the COVID study and the connection to IPF. Interleukin 6, for some people, they're going, what the heck are we talking about here?
It's a very tiny protein. It's called a cytokine. It's a messenger protein, so it helps cells communicate. It's associated with inflammation. And in the COVID study, interestingly enough, at day 5, in the 20 milligram treatment arm, you saw this massive reduction compared to control. That would be patients who weren't getting Ifenprodil in their serum level of IL-6. So that's sort of noteworthy. It's a short-term issue with COVID, and typically where you have IL-6, you have inflammation, which would be expected when you have a respiratory condition. The challenge with IL-6 and what's been shown in research is that it can contribute to an overreaction. So this cytokine storm, where you've got too much of an inflammation response, and that can damage healthy cells, and that's sort of a response out of control. It's obviously an important marker. But in the COVID study, by day 15, 85% of people who are hospitalized are going home. They're getting better. So we're looking at day 5, and we're seeing this massive change. And so there were 2 studies that I noted today in our news release. One study that showed an association between elevated IL-6 and patients with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So there's a connection in clinic. And then another study showing in an animal study that the blocking of IL-6 can reduce fibrosis in an animal study. So connecting the dots with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, this is a chronic condition. It's not an acute event like a COVID attack. You're going to have it for the duration of your life. That suggests you might have elevated IL-6 for a longer period. If Ifenprodil is reducing that IL-6, it might be reducing fibrosis, and that's what the study's all about.
Any last words for the investors that are watching right now?
Stay tuned. Algernon's business model is to identify a blockbuster drug from drugs that have already been approved, and to find a new use for them in a capital efficient model. And so more to come, and we've got our plan is to have multiple phase 2 trials running at all times, and while we're looking for that blockbuster drug.
All right. Promising news from Chris Moreau, CEO of Algernon Pharmaceuticals. Thanks, Chris, very much for the update.
Thanks, Cyndi. Good talking to you.
And thanks to everybody who watched as well. Have a great day.